History is shaped by decisions, but some decisions are also crimes. And in the biblical record, there are 5 murders, 5 specific acts of violence that didn't just end a life, they redirected the entire trajectory of human civilization. Today, we are counting them down. We're looking at the evidence, the context, and most importantly, the ripple effects. Because the most important thing about these murders is not the act, it's what happened because of the act. Some of these you know, some will surprise you, and number 1, I am convinced, is the most consequential act of violence in all of human history. Let's count them down.
Number 5 is a crime that technically isn't a murder, but it was attempted, and it changed the world. Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of assault. Joseph was thrown into an Egyptian prison. This seems like the end of his story. It was actually the beginning. In prison, Joseph interpreted the dreams of 2 fellow prisoners, a cupbearer and a baker. The cupbearer was released. 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream nobody could interpret. The cupbearer remembered Joseph. 1 false accusation, prison, dream interpretation, standing before Pharaoh, the second most powerful position in Egypt. 7 years of stored grain, Israel's survival in famine, the 12 tribes entering Egypt, the Exodus, the law, the Promised Land. Without Potiphar's wife's betrayal, there is no Exodus, there is no Moses, there is no 10 Commandments. The crime that looked like an ending was actually the hinge of history.
Number 4. David sees Bathsheba. He commits adultery. She becomes pregnant. He tries to cover it up by bringing her husband Uriah home from the front lines. But Uriah, honorable soldier that he is, refuses to sleep in his own house while his men are at war. So David does the unthinkable. He sends Uriah back to the front with a letter addressed to the military commander. The letter instructs the commander to put Uriah in the fiercest fighting and then withdraw. Uriah carried his own death warrant. The consequences were catastrophic. Nathan the prophet delivered God's verdict. The sword would never depart from David's house. His son Amnon raped his daughter Tamar. His son Absalom murdered Amnon and then led a full rebellion against his own father. David fled Jerusalem. Thousands died. 1 murder, 1 cover-up, broke the golden age of Israel's monarchy. The United Kingdom never fully recovered.
Number 3. Herod the Great. Hearing from the Magi that a new king of the Jews has been born, orders the execution of every male child in Bethlehem 2 years old and under. This one act of political paranoia sent the Holy Family fleeing to Egypt. It fulfilled Hosea 11:1, "Out of Egypt I called my son." It fulfilled Jeremiah 31:15, Rachel weeping for her children. And it guaranteed that Jesus would return from Egypt, reenacting the Exodus, and begin his ministry as the new Moses. Every step of Herod's paranoid violence drove the divine narrative forward. The act designed to stop the King of Kings became the very mechanism that placed Jesus in the right places at the right times to fulfill every prophecy about him. We still have murders number 2 and number 1, and number 1 is the one that changes everything. Subscribe before we get there. This is Biblical Cold Case. New investigations every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Don't go anywhere.
Number 2. The first murder in human history. Cain and Abel bring offerings to God. Abel's is accepted. Cain's is not. Scripture gives us Cain's emotional state precisely. His face fell. His countenance dropped. He was angry and humiliated. God gave Cain a direct warning. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Cain did not rule over it. He led his brother to a field. He killed him. The consequences reshaped human civilization. Fear entered human relationships for the first time. Cain said, "Whoever finds me will kill me." Geography changed. People spread out, fearing each other. The concept of divine justice was established. The first city was built by Cain's line, a civilization born from violence, trying to substitute human achievement for divine relationship. Every war, every murder, every act of violence in human history traces its first line back to this field.
Number 1. This is not a surprise, but it demands to be stated.
The crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth is the most consequential act of violence in the history of the world. Condemned by a Roman governor who declared him innocent, executed by a method designed to maximize suffering and public humiliation, died in approximately 6 hours, unusually fast for crucifixion, suggesting his physical condition from the preceding torture was severe. In purely historical terms, the crucifixion of Jesus triggered a movement that within 3 centuries had transformed the Roman Empire. Within 5 centuries, it had reshaped Europe. Today, 2 billion people on Earth organize their worldview around the identity of this man. But the biblical claim goes further than historical impact. The biblical claim is that this murder was also a sacrifice, that the victim chose it, that the death was the mechanism of a cosmic transaction that offered reconciliation to every human being who has ever lived. The murder that was meant to end a movement became the foundation of the world's largest religion. The execution that was meant to silence a voice echoed for 2,000 years and counting. No act of violence in human history produced more consequential results. That is why it is number 1. 5 murders, 5 turning points. What the biblical record shows us, consistently, is that human violence does not have the final word. That God moves in and through, and sometimes because of, the worst moments in human history. The cases are closed. The consequences are still unfolding. This is Biblical Cold Case. Subscribe, because next week we open a new file.